Lamborghini Huracan versus Lamborghini Temerario. Which one would I personally buy and why? So we have the new Temerario here, and when this came out, I saw a lot of comments saying that this looks too tame to be a Lamborghini. But remember, they said the exact same thing when the Huracan came out. And also keep in mind that this is the first iteration of the Temerario. As we know, Lamborghini is gonna bring out probably a Technica version, an STO, an Evo, and so on of the Temerario. So it's going to get just wilder and wilder as time goes on, and as the lifespan of the Temerario goes on. So it's going to get crazier as we move forward. Obviously, they're not going to dial it back. That's never going to happen. So we're going to have a look at this from the front, side, rear, and also the interior for the Temerario versus Huracan. And I'm going to let you know why I think the Temerario is a great looking Lamborghini. One specific reason for that, specifically inside of it. We're going to have a look at that when we jump into Photoshop. First of all, let's have a look at the basics, the spec and tech of these two beauties of cars. So here we have the spec and tech for the Huracan and the Temerario. We have a 5.2 liter V10, of course, for the Huracan, 4 liter twin turbo V8 for the Temerario, but it also has 3 electric motors, giving it 907 horsepower in the base spec. So it's going to get insanely crazy moving forward. 640 horsepower for the Huracan, of course. Torque is also up, not a substantial jump, but 538 pound-feet of torque for the Temerario compared to 442 for the Huracan. 0 to 60 around 3 seconds for the Huracan and under 2.7 seconds for the Temerario. Top speed 213 miles per hour up to 202 miles per hour for the Huracan. Now the Huracan's discontinuation marks the end of Lamborghini's V10 era as the brand proceeds full speed ahead towards electrification. Now thankfully they did not make the Temerario a complete EV. That would just be completely insane to do. Going from a V10 to a full EV would not have been a good idea. So they do have this hybrid setup with 3 electric motors for the Temerario. You removing 2 cylinders, adding 3 electric motors, and this hybrid setup with each electric motor giving it an extra 148 horsepower was first introduced in the Revuelto, of course. And then you have the weight issue when it comes to electrification and hybridization like this. But the thing is, it has 3 new e-motors, but each of these just weighs 34 pounds, which is honestly not a lot. You also have all-wheel drive, of course, for the Temerario, and redline up to 11,000 RPM. This is a screamer. We've seen some recent videos of this where they, press videos on YouTube where they're on the track, and it sounds fantastic. It sounds really good. Not sure though if it sounds better than the V10 that we have in the Huracan, specifically if you put a specific exhaust on there. It just sounds great. So the interiors here, both the Huracan and the Temerario is inspired by Lamborghini's feel like a pilot design principle, almost like a fighter jet cockpit, and you have this start button that you pop up and then you press the start button, similar to what we have in a jet. So in the Huracan you have an 8.4-inch touchscreen sitting right above the start button, and you have a 12.3-inch gauge cluster. The Temerario adds a third screen, but in this case I don't think the third screen intrudes too much in the interior, because the integration of it is beautifully done. It is for the passenger, and that is a 9.1-inch screen. You have a 12.3-inch infotainment gauge cluster and an 8.4-inch vertical touchscreen for the infotainment system, and I think that is enough. We don't need bigger screens than that at all. Now the starting price for 2024 Huracan, the Technica, started at $249,865, which honestly, when you think about it, it feels almost like a great deal, because the new Temerario starts at $357,621, and if you spec it out, load it with options, it can go up to over $500,000 for the Temerario. So it is way more expensive than the Huracan for sure. As a viewer of this channel, you get the best current deals and rebates on brand new wheels, tires, parts, and accessories for your vehicle at TireRack.com. Click the link in the description to learn more, and thanks for supporting the channel. So let's jump in Photoshop here, because this is the fun stuff right here, talking about this design. Now, the reason why I think we're going to talk about that in the side view. I think it makes more sense when we talk about why I love this design, and I think it's a great Lamborghini design when we look at the side view. I did make a redesign of this, though, because the reason being, when I look at this design, it is very chiseled, and we have sort of a very thin slot here for the main headlight unit. You can see the headlights sitting back here. I wanted to make a little bit more personality for the Temerario design and add some nice LEDs in here going up, something like this. I can't really remember what I did with this design, but I'm going to throw it up here so you can see the redesign that I did. And I also know that I moved these areas here. You see these fins that goes in here. I think it's too far apart between these two fins. So what I wanted to do is just extend this wing a little bit into this area, so it ends somewhere in this area right here. I think that would just give it a better dynamic vibe in the lower section of the Temerario, of course, and then you have the daytime run lights down here. This is a cool feature because it has this hexagonal, of course, Lamborghini shape. What I wanted to do here is just add a little bit more thickness to one side, so it creates a bit more of a dynamic feel for this specific key graphic feature in the front end. And that was my redesign of the Temerario. I do like that we still have these typical Lamborghini lines in the hood that goes from wide at the bottom and then up to narrow up top to the windshield. Usually it goes in the opposite way. So usually we have narrow in the bottom and then going wider up to the A-pillar or something like that. Well, that is not how Lamborghini does things, even though they do add a kind of a line that goes like that as well. So we have this V shape in the hood, which is typical for Lamborghini. I do love this color. You can have over 400 colors for the Temerario when you spec it, so choosing a color is gonna be very, very hard if you're spending $350,000 on your vehicle. Now, looking at the Evo down here, this is still a very, very nice looking design, the Huracan, and it still looks modern to me. It feels like it could still be in production for another 5 years at least and still look very, very modern. Of course, they updated it a lot over the years with the STO, the Sterato as well, and the STJ, which was a special vehicle. Huracan, I think they built only 10 units of that version as a final goodbye to the Huracan. But the lines here, I think I actually prefer the lines and the headlights that we have in the Huracan, because I think it gives it more of a personality compared to what we have in the Temerario up top. The Temerario looks a little bit, in the front end, the fascia of the Temerario looks like it's lacking a little bit of the Lamborghini DNA and the personality, because the graphics are so simple. We don't have these LEDs, for example, creating this identity even at night. If you see this at night, you know instantly that this is a Lamborghini Huracan that you have behind you, so you better move over if you're on the highway, for example. But you can see that we still have these lines, typical Lamborghini DNA, going from wide at the bottom up to narrow in the top. Beautiful looking design, and I made a redesign of this as well. I wanted to see what this could look like if we turned it into it's gonna sound crazy, but a front engine Huracan. Just move back the greenhouse and have the V8 sitting up front. That would be a pretty interesting solution for maybe a GT style Huracan or something like that. But looking at the side view, and this is where it gets very interesting when you look at the Temerario, because to me, the Temerario looks like a perfect modernization of the old Gallardo. It has the same philosophy when it comes to the simplicity of the air intakes. Here, for example, I'm going to show you side by side in just a minute with the Gallardo and show you what I mean. But this looks beautiful right here. Let's make it red so you can see what I'm sketching here. This intake, love the design of the intake, and this line here gives it almost like 90s vibes for the graphic design, the key features in the side view, meaning this air intake that we have on the side. We also have the typical one single curvature going from the front end, dipping down into this beautiful ducktail spoiler in the back. This single line is typical for Lamborghini as well, and then we have this, of course, curvature over the front axle going up to the greenhouse, curves a little bit over the rear axle as well, creating a nice muscle right here. We have some key graphics right here with this black line. Not a huge fan of these wheels simply because they are black. When we have a green car like this and these beautiful wheels, the design of the wheels look beautiful. I just want to be able to see the design and appreciate this design better, and that means not having it be in black. But it still has, of course, this super chiseled design that we're used to seeing from a Lamborghini. The thing I miss about the Temerario, though, in the Temerario side view, is this chamfer that we have on the Huracan. This was one of my favorite design features of the Huracan, and how we went in to this very sharp corner right here and then shoots back over the rear axle, and how this line again goes up into the ducktail. Beautiful design, and this is the reason why I think this could still, you know, be a modern looking design for another 5 years, because it has this chiseledness that is becoming so popular now, not just with the Lamborghini, but also a lot of other brands. And we also have this area down here in the lower section with the intake, carving out some of this volume in the lower section. Definitely prefer these wheels that we have compared to the ones that we have in the Temerario for sure. These are some of the best. When you see these wheels in real life, they look huge. That is because we have a massive volume that's empty right here inside of the wheel. These big holes. It's just a beautiful looking wheel design, and thankfully, as you can see, they are not black. That is not what I want to see for the Huracan, but still very chiseled design. Again, of course, with this single line dipping across the entire vehicle into the rear end and into the ducktail spoiler back there. To me, when I compare these two, again, I just feel like the Huracan had more personality in its lines. The Temerario is not a bad looking design, but it just lacks some identity. It feels like it lost a lot of identity with the Temerario when it comes to the front and also the side, and not in the rear though. Now this is the most interesting slide in this Photoshop presentation here when it comes to the side view, comparing the Temerario up top with the Gallardo. And I wanted to show you this because this is why I appreciate this Temerario design, side view, side profile so much. Because to me, it feels like a clear modernization of one of the most beautiful looking Lamborghinis of all time, Luke Donkervolke's design with the Lamborghini Gallardo. You can see that this line right here is still intact. This single curvature going across the entire top part of the vehicle. And then we have these beautiful intakes in the sides, of course, coming back in the Temerario as well in a new modern way up there. The proportions look spot on. Love this shoulder line. We have a sharp shoulder line right here going over the rear axle, creating a nice muscle, and a shelf up top here. We have an intake right here. We have the same intake in the same position on the Temerario. And it also looks like the greenhouse of the Temerario is inspired by the design of the Gallardo, because it feels like the greenhouse almost looks identical to the one that we have in the Gallardo, even though this area right here is a little bit different. But we still have the air intake right here. We still have the side blade being a properly classic design for the side blade design. And that is the reason why I think this, even though it lacks some identity in the key features, the overall proportions, and where the main graphics sit in the side view, looks proper Lamborghini to me. One detail I also love is that they added this black piece right here to create more of a, to connect it more with the more special and one-off Lamborghini concepts that we've seen the past 5 years or so, to make this wheelhouse or the outline of the wheelhouse a little bit unique. You can see that, again, we have this muscle over the rear axle, and the greenhouse compared to the Gallardo is very, very much similar to what we have in the old Lamborghini. The wheels here, some of my favorite looking wheels in the Gallardo, of course, they're timeless. Still today, they look beautiful, and they remind me of the Audi Obus wheels, just with a little bit of more aggressive styling to them. And this is, of course, the Gallardo was designed right after Audi bought Lamborghini. You can see that we have holes here, but we also have these pieces in the wheels, carving out some volume here of the spokes themselves. So it creates a 5-spoke design, but you still have the holes visible. Very, very unique and very cool looking wheel design for the Gallardo. Now looking at the rear end, I also made a redesign of the rear end of the Temerario. I wanted to see this piece right here. You see how this goes downwards in this area, this angle. I wanted to have this be straight, so a straight line. And I also work a little bit on the dynamic features of the taillights and the thickness right here, change those up. But this area right here, how this is completely empty and void of any sort of bodywork, so you can appreciate the width and the plantedness of this, looking at it from a straight rear view, because you can see the entire tire here, the wheel, the width of the tire and how it's planted, because you don't have anything covering it up here. You have a massive diffuser in the back end. This, to me, for the first iteration of what the Temerario is going to be, it looks extremely aggressive. I can't wait to see what the STO, for example, and the STJ and all these special versions, updated version of the Temerario is going to look like, if this already looks this insane in the rear end. But again, I just have to say that I prefer the rear end of the Evo. The Evo, when they updated the Huracan and added this ducktail spoiler back here, it just changed everything for me when it comes to the rear end of the Huracan. The regular Huracan looks beautiful in the rear end, but it doesn't really have anything to send it off properly in the rear end. But with the Evo, they added this spoiler in the back, and it totally changes everything. It makes it look so much more modern. I also love the exhaust pipes being integrated right here in the middle. You can see the exhaust pipe on the Temerario sits all the way up here, very high up. But again, I prefer these bazooka tailpipes, the round ones that we have here, and also how this body line, the body color stops right here. So this entire piece going from this area and down, this entire piece is the diffuser. It's a massive diffuser. And if I were to pick one of these when it comes to exterior design, I think I still prefer the Huracan, to be honest. Now, looking at the interiors, we have the new interior for the Temerario up top with the new screen. We do have a, I think this was a 9.1 inch screen or something like that, 8.1 in the middle. Don't want to see bigger screens than this. I really like the interior of the new Temerario. It looks like a spaceship, alien spaceship up here with the vents, and also these carbon fiber pieces going above this screen, the passenger screen that we have. And you still have this fighter jet start button right here. You just pop this up and press the start button. That is how you start the vehicle, just like it did in the Huracan as well. Brand new steering wheel, brand new gauge cluster. The gauge cluster has an interesting housing for it. You can see some hardware here, the screws, for example, in this carbon fiber piece. The steering wheel doesn't have the same chiselness that we had in the Huracan down here with the center portion, but the dash itself looks way more modern than we had in the Huracan, because the Huracan just had a simple dash like this, and then the air outlets, the vents just set like this, just popping out of the dash itself. Doesn't have this cool integration like we have right there in the Technica. So which one of these would I buy, considering that the Technica started at just over $249,000, $250,000. The new Temerario, $340,000 for that. It's a lot of money. It's got a lot more power, 640 compared to 903 or something like that for the Temerario. But honestly, I don't really, I'm starting to care less about horsepower numbers and more so about exterior design and how the car makes me feel. Now, I haven't driven the Temerario. I think once I drive the Temerario, maybe I will change my mind. But for now, I would still 100% go with a used Huracan Evo with this new design that they did in the front rear end with the send-off with the ducktail spoiler, because I think that is honestly one of the most beautiful Lamborghinis ever made.